And I think it's wonderful this church is doing this today, and delighted to, so many people are interested and concerned and have a heart for those incarcerated. Well, I'm here representing, and Elizabeth Swanson over here too, and okay, you've been part of it too, the Charis Prison Ministry. And I started in that about 30 years ago, and I've seen many changes too. And but I lost my heart to it right away, and so I'm delighted to talk about it and hope get involved too. But Charis Prison Ministry is a non-denominational Christian ministry that's made up of lay people and clergy and spiritual directors. And we present God's reconciling love in Jesus Christ to inmates in several prisons in Minnesota. And actually, it's across the country, but Kairos is another name for it. But we have some uniqueness here in Minnesota. So we have a little separation in that we have men and women on teams together, where some of the other programs have just men in men's prison or just women in women's prison. But it's basically the same program. But the serving on a Charis weekend are those who've experienced a Cursillo weekend themselves. Cursillo, or Walk to Emmaus, is another name for part of it. Via de Cristo, Tres Dias Unidos en Cristo. And that is something I'm very grateful, again, that was started in the Catholic Church many, many years ago by a priest in Spain. And I'm just curious, has anybody gone through Cursillo? Okay, a few of you. It's a wonderful, means a short course in Christianity. But team members are selected and prepared by the leaders assigned to each weekend. And currently we are in Rochester Prison, Federal Prison, Sandstone Federal Prison, Shakopee State Prison, and Faribault State Prison. There were some others we were involved in the past, and hopefully we'll be able to get back in. But basically what it is, for those of you who don't know, it starts in an evening, goes through the evening, and then 3 days from beginning in the morning and through the end of the evening. So there's a lot involved and a lot of time involved. The initial was held at Stillwater Prison, but we aren't there anymore. Since then, we've had about 185 weekend retreats in Minnesota, and we're thrilled for each one of them. But I remember when I first got involved, I had friends who were on teams, and they asked me to help with one particular little piece. So I got in and got to kind of see it and feel it a bit, and then was very eager to be on teams after that point. But I remember getting on my first team, and you're a little apprehensive. You might know what you're going to experience, but as I listened to stories of what the inmates had gone through, their life stories, kind of, as they shared during the weekend, I realized, boy, if I would have grown up like that in that situation, I'd probably be right here in prison too. So it removes any judgment you have of them. However, let me say, on some of the teams, I've met many billionaires, lawyers, university professor. There was even a nun with a doctorate degree. So it kind of goes across the broad spectrum of society. But I'm just so thankful for everybody who attends the program. Another comment I have, I remember on one weekend at Shakopee, it was kind of a break time, and I was in the hallway, and everybody was just beginning to leave the room, and 2 guards were right there. And so we had a little conversation, and one of the guards said, it's very interesting. He said he noticed that as more percentage of the inmates have gone through Charis, the whole tone in the prison is just calmer, less upheaval. And he attributed that to Charis. but it's also the rest of the ministries too. But the weekend method, it's a structured, Christ-centered program, and it gives, like I said, a short course in Christianity. So it talks about accepting a friendship with God, and then growing in that friendship through study, having Christian community, spirituality, and then action, reaching others and for Christ too, and on. There's talks, and it just grows from the beginning to the end in the depth. But what we see is transformation of their lives, and it's beautiful to see that as time goes on. On the, like I said, 14 talks, we also have chapel services the first evening, and then 2 or 3 each day following, so it's a worshipful time. Music is very much scattered throughout the day, which is important, and prayer for sure. And then after each talk, well, we meet in small groups. So most of the prison, not all of them, there's circular tables you can sit around. And so after each talk, the table then, with probably about 6 inmates and 2 team leaders or team members, discuss the talk and what impacted you from the talk, what did you learn, and so on. And in addition, we have time where each individual small group can meet in a room and just talk about their reaction to the whole thing and share some of their stresses and what they're gaining from this time. And that's a very powerful time. And then prayer. Another thing that we have is what we call the active remembrance. We do that every day. And that was interesting because I was on a board way years ago when we were dealing with this, because we have, the Catholic Church started Cursillo, shared it with different Protestant churches, and then we united together and brought it to prison. And so how do we, Eucharist, communion, how do we do this together? And it's hard work. They really work together with the various parts of the Christian church to come up with something that was acceptable to all. And because we felt it was very important to do that every day. The breaking of the bread, the sharing of the cup, and reflecting on Jesus and his love and sacrifice for us. Well, after the weekend, we have a grand reunion a few weeks later, and that's half a day, isn't it, or so? And it's a time when we can get together again and reflect on the meaningfulness of the weekend for each of us and share. And then after that, we meet. It varies by prison, but it's once or twice a month for an evening. And so we can keep up our relationship with them. And there's usually an insider, an offender who shares their story and what God has done in their life, and an outsider who can give either that or a reflection. And again, we do the active remembrance and singing and prayer and small group discussion again, and it's a way to keep our connection and give support to them. What does it take to be, well, let me just say the impact of it too. I just want to share one story. This was in Rush City many years ago, but it just really struck me. At the very end of the weekend, and we kind of gather and close the whole thing, and the inmates or offenders are able to share what any comments they have about the weekend. And then as we did that in that weekend, the warden was there, and there might have been some other prison personnel there. And one man, I'll never forget it, he got up, an inmate, and he said, well, I've been here for many years, and now I have about 2 more days to serve, and I'm going home. I'm done. But he said, I had a plan in place. In fact, he said, every detail, it's just in line, that when I get out in 2 days, I was going to start the process to complete this, and it was a person who, was either who witnessed against him or turned him in. It's all, every piece, just accurately put in place. But he said, no, not now. After I've been through this weekend, I'm done with that. And I think it speaks to one element that we've added in Charis that isn't necessarily on the outside weekends, big piece about forgiveness too. And we have a series of meditations on that, on the stages of forgiveness, the importance of forgiveness, and then we have a little forgiveness service that's pretty powerful, and I could tell you stories about that too. But how to become a volunteer? Because we do need more volunteers, and many of us, we've commented, we're getting older, and we need to keep bringing in new volunteers, because it takes a number for each weekend. But you need a willing heart and a care for those who are incarcerated, and the biblical injunction, visit those in prison. God loves them dearly. So, and you have to have gone through a Cursillo weekend yourself before you can be on a team. And there's applications and so on, and people refer to the prison requirements that you have to go through. But it's worth it, let me tell you, to go through all of that. Well, I guess maybe that's about it. There's much more I could say. I didn't know how he's going to fit this into 15 minutes, but I did want to also talk about one thing we've been thrilled with. You know, the rules before, we couldn't have any contact with them when they got out, or even when they're in, other than when we go in as a group. Now, both the federal and the state levels, there's been a lot of look at recidivism rates, and so now we are allowed to have outside contact through the group, and we've created Charis Connects. And that is for inmates, the women coming out of Shakopee prison. Once a month, we gather at a church in Crystal, and bless that church. We have a meal, supper, and then program, active remembrance, prayer time, music sometimes. And actually this summer we're even going to go bowling again, and we did that last year. So there's fun times too. Also people have donated things that, it's hard to get out of prison. So there's like toothpaste, soaps, there's some clothes donated, pillows I saw, sheets, anything that would help them as they get out, because find a job, as we've talked about, is hard, and how to put this all together. So that has been a joy, that those who've been involved on Charis teams in Shakopee can go and keep that connection and encourage those women and battle on the outside. And we're hoping that we can create one for men in the time ahead too. Now, as I mentioned, the need for volunteers and how to get that going, we've run across people who are very interested in getting involved in this, but their church is not connected with any of the Cursillo programs. And so we're going to have our first outside weekend coming up June 22nd through the 25th, and it will be held at a church. You sleep at the church overnight. And it's not to compete with the various outside Cursillo movements, but it's for those who can't do it through their church. So that's coming up, and if any of you would be interested in going through that too, let us know, because we do need more volunteers. But I've got to say, it's just such a blessing to be in these ministries, you all know, and these dear people, and to see, watch, observe, them grab a hold of the hand of God and grow in the relationship with God, and some of them end up on the outside and then going into ministries themselves. It's over the years just the wonderful things we've seen. So with that I will end, and any questions anybody has?